Hey YouTube, today I'm going to talk about all of the different modifications that I've done to my FJ Cruiser so far. Now generally when you think about the FJ Cruiser, you think about heavily modded vehicles. You've got lift kits and you've got larger tires and all kinds of different things. When you look at my FJ, it looks pretty much stock from the outside, but when you go inside and you take a look at all of the different mods that I've added to the truck, I feel like it's an FJ with some of the coolest interior modifications that one can do to the FJ. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and just kind of go over the list of things that I've already done to it. We're going to start on the outside here. One of the very first things you notice about my FJ is these magnetic flags, and these are made by a company called Tactilian, and they are in fact magnetic and can just be peeled off. You can throw this on anywhere you'd like. If you want to throw it on the rear quarter panel here, that looks cool too, but I personally think that it looks great right here in front of the side mirrors. And they're removable. I think silver and white is a great combination for the color of FJ that I have. I've got the iceberg, and that gray flag just kind of looks cool to me. So technically not a mod, but just something that makes my FJ stand apart from the rest. The next thing you'll notice is the running boards. Now when I first bought the FJ, it didn't have any running boards, and I know that since I have kids who are going to be coming in and out of the FJ, having something for them to step on would be super helpful. So this was actually the first modification that I added to the FJ. You'll see these are not the OEM Toyota running boards, but they look pretty close. If you look at the OEM boards, you'll see that they have a different pattern, but these boards were a little bit cheaper and they achieved the same effect for me, which is letting the kids get in and out of the truck a little bit easier. I have noticed that when I look at other people's OEM running boards that they have started to fade a little bit. So I don't know if this particular type of plastic or brand is a little bit more resistant to fading, or if people just don't take care of their running boards. But if you look at some other Toyota FJ Cruiser running boards, you'll see that they're starting to turn gray a lot. So that's one other thing. You can tell the previous owner, who didn't have the running boards installed, he left a lot of wear on the indoor sill here. So I imagine he would step foot here and cause that wear on the driver's door sill here. So when I step in the truck, I put my foot on here, grab the O-blank handle, and then I make my way into the truck. So this was a great addition for me and something that I would highly recommend for any of the shorter drivers out there. Running boards aren't necessarily practical when you're on the trails. I think rock rails would be a little bit more appropriate. So if I were to do some off-roading in the FJ, clearly I would have gone with rock rails, but for me, these running boards were what fit the bill. All right, continuing with the outside of the FJ, we have the Easy View mirrors. And as I mentioned in my Easy View mirror video, these are not easy to find. They pretty much ceased manufacturing these mirrors. These mirrors were probably the second thing that I purchased when I started modding my FJ. And these have been one of the best, if not the best mod that I've done to the FJ Cruiser. There's currently a group of people out there on the forums who have talked about buying OEM Japanese glass from the Japanese FJs. And apparently they do a very similar thing as the Easy View mirrors. So that's something to look into if you're interested in purchasing mirrors that will drastically improve your visibility in the FJ. All right, we're gonna take a look at the trunk now. And when I purchased the FJ, it came with one cargo net, this bottom one here. And I find this kind of useful to throw in random things here and there. If I have a hat, I'll throw it in there. And then I noticed that the top portion of this door also had an indentation, just like the bottom one. So I think that these doors were meant to have two of these cargo nets. So I bought a second one and I installed it. It was pretty easy. Basically, you would drill some small holes here, and basically line it up and insert the clips. There was no need to take this plastic trim off at all. It was super easy. It took me maybe 15 minutes to install. Now I have two rear cargo nets. Now I know a lot of people do a folding table here. That's very practical for people who do a lot of tailgating or camping or whatever, but I haven't done too much of that, so I just felt that having this cargo net here was best for me. All right, now that we're still in the trunk, I want to show you the storage space solution that I have here. I purchased these bins from a company called Gilmore Kramer. I made a video on this entire trunk storage thing a while back, but just wanted to give you a look at it here. I have 3/4 inch plywood here with a piano hinge in the middle and a support beam down the middle, so I'm able to slide open these drawers. They come out pretty good. I'm able to fit a lot of things in here. When I'm grocery shopping, I can just throw my grocery bags in here and not have things kind of, you know, flying around willy-nilly as I'm driving. These drawers are practically the perfect fit for the FJ Cruiser. The height, width, and length are ideal, and the shelf pretty much sits on top of this little section here. So that's that. This has definitely been one of my favorite mods in the FJ Cruiser as well. All right, now moving into the interior of the FJ, I want to talk about the USB ports that I've installed. Now, when you buy an FJ Cruiser stock, it comes with one USB port, and that port generally sits right here in the center console right here. I've since replaced it, but it's the aux port basically, and people complain about the aux port not charging fast enough. So that's one of the drawbacks of having the original aux port as your charger, and it's basically just one USB charger in the entire FJ. So in order to modernize my FJ Cruiser for my needs, I added a handful of USB charging ports, and I'll start here in the center console. I have this USB charging port which fits right in the switch blank position. I've got the rubber cover on it, right, and it's got two charging ports there. So right off the bat now I have 1, 2, and 3 USB ports here. Like, I don't use this one for charging at all. Ever since I upgraded my stereo, which I'll talk about later, I decided to try to keep the aux port functionality. So I bought this piece and I installed it to go along with this stereo head unit. Continuing on with the USB port installation, I have installed one here in my glove box, and you can see it right there. So I've got one that's 1 amp and one that's 2.1 amps, and I can basically I charge my phone here. Here is the second USB input from the stereo, and I have a flash drive there to play my music from. So that's connected to the stereo, and this is just a regular charging port. So now we've got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 USB charging ports, right? That's 6 right now. I have this one currently connected to a switch here that I can make hot by essentially just turning that on, right? And that'll activate. And I have it wired this way because I want to have the functionality of being able to charge my phone while the car is off, so I don't have to keep the key in the ignition all the time. So if I'm just idling or whatever, I'll just turn on the switch and then be able to charge. The same idea goes for my center console USB charging ports, which are in the back in this console here. I've got a switch here that says power that I can turn on while the truck is off. They were installed here with the idea that my kids would one day, of course, need to charge their phones and devices in the future as they sit in the back seat. So here are 4 more USB charging options. So for a total of 10 USB charging ports in the FJ. It might be a little overkill, but I just wanted to include these for my rear passengers, and I thought that having 2 separate outlets here was ideal. So I went from a total of 1 USB charging port in a stock FJ to 10. The next modification to my FJ is, of course, the Android head unit here. This is a 12.3-inch head unit. The video review that I made on this thing was probably the thing that got people starting to watch my channel. And I've had a lot of questions about this. I do plan on doing a follow-up review on this thing. It's been at least a year, and there have been people who've asked questions about the longevity of it, what I think about it after a year. So I'm going to go ahead and try to record a video on that later on this year. But by far, this has been one of my favorite mods so far in the interior of the FJ. Basically because it improves the audio quality of my music. I'm able to insert music on a USB port, as I mentioned, through here, and I can load and unload whatever music I want. If I'm going on a long road trip, then I can throw some music on the drive, pop it in, and then be good to go. I'm not going to go into too much detail about all of the features of this head unit. That's what the previous video is for, and I'll let you guys watch that on your own. So it's a pretty long video, but it's very comprehensive. So go ahead and take a look at that when you have a chance. In relation to the head unit is the GPS unit that came with it, and I installed it here in the gauge pod, so it sits basically underneath this cover. And if you're interested in that, I have another video about installation on that GPS antenna into the gauge pod there. So go ahead and check that out. All right, staying here with the interior, I've got the billet shift knobs here. You can find these on eBay or Amazon, but originally you have the black plastic knobs. When I found these, I sold the other ones, and I just like the overall look of these, and I think that it goes well with the color scheme that I have in here currently. It's a black interior with silver trim. You know, you've got the silver trim on the steering wheel. You got the black and white here in the gauge pod, and basically everything kind of matches. Not really necessary, but I think they look pretty cool. The next thing is, once I got these, I was looking for these Drake off-road climate control knobs, and these things are not being manufactured anymore. They were really hard to find as well, and I made another video on the installation of these when I finally got them. So I just basically mentioned that I've had the FJ for almost 4 years now. I'd been searching for these ever since I saw them, seeing people's pictures and stuff. I thought they looked pretty cool, so I kept looking and looking for these over the years. Never found any until recently. Now I finally can complete the look of the silver and black inside of the FJ, which I think is really, really nice. Continuing on with the interior, I have some heated seats. You can see the switches here. The heated seats was one of the most difficult installs that I've done. These switches are wired to go on only when the key is in the ACC position. And that's because if I were to leave the car, you know, I don't want the heated seats to accidentally stay on, because if you forget about that, that'll drain your battery quickly. I have one here for the driver's side, this here for the passenger side. These are by far one of my favorite mods that I've done to the FJ, for sure. My wife really enjoys it. I really enjoy it. You know, I have a bad back, and on long drives, it's very, very helpful for me to have that heat. I found the heating elements on eBay. There's a set for probably $20 to $25 you can get, and basically it requires taking the seats apart, taking the upholstery off, placing the pad, and then running the wiring. All right, continuing on with the interior of the FJ, we have the magnetic air conditioning vent panels. And basically what I did was I took apart these panels on both sides. There's one on the passenger side and one on the driver's side over there. And basically stuck some neodymium magnets on the back of this panel and basically magnetize it. So I am able to throw pictures on the panel here and just kind of use it as a magnet board. So I made a video on this. It's called the Easiest FJ Cruiser Mod. Here's a look at the other side. This side is also magnetized. I bought something like this at Target. It's a pencil holder. It's got a magnet on the back, and you can just slap it on and it sticks. It does slide around a little bit, but you've got this little bump to kind of keep things in place. It's strong enough to hold, you know, pens and stuff. You can actually put a phone in there if you'd like. I would advise against having anything here that could potentially impale you if you get into an accident. So it's something to keep in mind. This is how I use it. You're free to use it however you'd like, but just keep in mind that there are some safety precautions that you might want to consider. And finally, we have the overhead console sunglasses holder. This is a video that I made a while back. This is a overhead console from a Ford F-150. And you can see that the proof of concept here works. I know at least one other FJ owner who has done this installation. Originally, in this place, I had the map lights, which looked something like this. So I pulled that out and was able to have this installed. It does require a little bit of a spacer. You can see that there's a little bit of a downward slope, that there was a spacer installed here in order to get this entire thing to fit flush. Eventually one day I might change these to LEDs, but haven't gotten there yet, but that's an option. But yeah, I'm able to have my map lights here with the added function of having 2 sunglass spots. All right, so now that I've gone over a bunch of the interior mods that I've done to the truck so far, I want to talk about some things that I am thinking about for the future, and some other ideas that I have that I've not quite been able to implement yet for various reasons. So this switch here that says wireless charger, my original intention was to install some sort of wireless charging pad in the glove box here. You know, I thought it would be kind of a cool way to modernize the FJ. If I open this up, if I have a charging pad here, I could just throw my phone here and just let it charge wirelessly while I drive. So I installed this switch in anticipation of installing something like that in the future. If you guys know of any OEM type of wireless charging pads for the FJ Cruiser, whether it might sit here in the center console or here in the glove box ideally, then please let me know in the comments down below. So that's something that I've been anticipating for a while. I think the technology for wireless charging is going to improve in the future. So perhaps sometime in the future, I will be able to run a wireless charging pad and use this switch. Now, on the other hand, this spot would be perfect for a garage clicker. I don't own my own place yet, but if and when that day eventually comes, I do want to have a momentary switch for my garage in this spot. So if I don't eventually do the wireless charging pad, then I would like to have a garage switch wired to that spot. But here's my garage clicker, and it fits perfectly in this little rectangle here. So I don't have a need to wire this clicker into any switches because this is, this is the perfect spot. And also I don't own the home, I don't own the garage. So eventually one day I will move out and give this back. So I want to keep this in perfect condition for my landlord. So for now, this is the perfect solution for the garage clicker. But in the future, I do have this switch, and it is one of these switches that'll fit in those switch blank spots, and it says garage opener. It's a momentary switch, so basically when you click it, it returns into place. But yeah, it's wired the same way as the other switch blanks. Whenever I own a home in the future, then I'm going to try to wire this garage opener switch and place it in this spot here where the wireless charger currently sits. If anybody has wired a switch to their garage opener, let me know, because that's definitely something that I'm going to look to do in the future for sure. One other thing that I may consider adding in the future is a forward-facing camera. So when I purchased this head unit, it did come with a backup camera. And I purposefully asked them to try to integrate the existing backup camera to the head unit, which they were able to do. So that saved me the trouble of having to install a separate camera. But the idea going forward is to potentially have a forward-facing camera that would help for, parking situations or whatever. And I've seen some people on the FJ forums do some 3D printing of these triangular pieces where you can slide a camera in there. And it would be kind of a cool thing to just kind of stick it in there and have the view there as well. This may be a little bit high. It might be easier to place somewhere down below here, but of course I've got the license plate here in the way, so maybe one day I will have this installed and have the forward-facing option on the FJ. Since we're in here, I wanted to show you this FCam app. I believe this app would be appropriate to use if a forward-facing camera was installed. So if I click on this, you'll see clearly I don't have, I have the little warning here because nothing is installed, but if I click on that, this is one for forward facing, and then if you click on it again, it'll show the rear facing camera. So I'm not quite sure what the correct installation process would be. I know nothing about installing cameras in these systems. This is why I had a professional install this head unit. But in hindsight, I probably should have asked them to install the camera. They could have run the wiring for me, and then perhaps I would have had a forward-facing camera to go along with the rear-facing camera here. So perhaps something I'll consider in the future. It's not something that I see myself using often, but just another idea that I may have for future mods. Now let me take you again to the back of the FJ, and one of the coolest things that I've seen in some of the more recent FJ Cruiser models is a built-in air compressor. And I don't know if they're factory from Toyota, but if you look at like models from Dubai, you'll see that they have this built-in air compressor system that's mounted here on the back panel of the trunk here. And what it is there is a air compressor installed inside of the like the jack housing area. They install it there, and then you can run a hose out here and then set your PSI, and then you know, there's an on and off switch that you can flip on from here. I've always thought that was pretty cool because it does keep with the OEM look. If you look at some of the more modern ones, you'll see them, and it does look like it belongs there. It does look like it came from the factory. So having an integrated air compressor would be kind of cool to me. I've read reviews on it that, you know, people say that it's not quite strong enough for their needs. It takes a long time to inflate the tires, but to have it built in would be kind of cool. You know, I did look into it, and the company that makes the air compressor is called NSV Auto. And I reached out to them via social media, and they were able to find me a local vendor that was willing to install it for me. It was a little bit on the expensive side, and for something that I know that I probably wouldn't use often, since I have the existing air compressor here, and also since I have this trunk storage solution, it would require me to remove one of the drawers here in order to access the air compressor tubing and inflate my tires. So it's a little bit of an inconvenience factor that kind of prevented me from spending the money on going that route. But in the future, I don't know, it still may be something that I would consider. And lastly, while we're back in the trunk, I always thought it was cool that other FJs had a power outlet. I don't have one here, but I always thought that one day I would install something that I could use, and that may be a 12-volt USB or a 12-volt cigarette outlet here. So having a port here would necessitate removing the shelf. It's a minor inconvenience, but it's still something that I might consider adding just for the sake of adding. But you know, as I mentioned before, I already have 10 USB charging ports in the FJ. Adding something back here I wouldn't necessarily need, simply because I can run the power that I need from the cigarette lighter up in the front. Alright, so that's a comprehensive list of all the mods that I've done for my FJ so far. I do feel like it's practically complete for what I need. Like I mentioned before, I do love the OEM look of all the mods that I've done. If you look at the truck from the outside, it looks just like a stock FJ, but when you step inside, you're in this whole other world that I feel like is a very unique experience for an FJ Cruiser. There's a ton of mods here that I feel work for my needs specifically, and they keep in line with the OEM look of the truck, which I really, really like. So that's it, you guys. I hope you guys found that helpful. I've always wanted to do this comprehensive list of modifications, and there's a couple of things that I may potentially add in the future, as I mentioned, but for the most part, everything is practically set the way that I want it for my FJ Cruiser. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed that, let me know what you think. If you have any other ideas that you guys have for your FJ, feel free to let me know, because I'm always open to trying new things and you know, trying to improve the functionality of my FJ Cruiser. So hope you guys enjoyed that. Perhaps one day I will do a ton of exterior mods to the FJ. Who knows? We'll see. So yeah, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.